Hello, we're going to start with part three of important terms to know for the book thief. And we're going to talk about the Nazi occupation, which is when the Nazis took over other countries. Now, there were a couple places they were able to take over without really much of a war and without much resistance. And then, even when the war officially started in 1939 with Poland, they had invented a new style of war, they had been building up their army, and most other countries were not fully prepared for this style of fighting and to fight. And so they were largely able to take over much of Europe without much of a fight. This is France, where they took over parts of Italy, a lot of the Eastern countries, Poland, Austria, these were all taken over as well. There really wasn't that much resistance until 1942 with the Battle of Stalingrad. And we're going to watch a short clip that kind of just shows how Nazis were able to take over.
The German Third Reich is at the height of its power. Hitler's armies are charging through the heart of the Soviet Union towards the oil fields of Asia. One last obstacle remains. A city on the Volga where the fate of the world is being decided. Stalingrad.
Okay. And I think what that illustrates is just how easily Germany was able to take over, but the importance of Stalingrad for several reasons. It's the one place that is really starting to resist Russia, Germany, and the country is Russia. Britain is doing a pretty good job, but they're getting beat pretty badly. When you see Stalingrad come up in the book, please know that both sides were just throwing soldiers at each other. It was brutal. There were tons of casualties, tons of death. So just be aware of that's what's going on in the book, that it's not a place you want to be sent. Couple other things to remember about Nazi Germany. So, there's this idea that if you aren't with us, then you are against us. So it was assumed that everybody should become a Nazi and should give money to the Nazi party and become a dedicated member. And if you did not, that meant there was something very suspicious against you. And it must mean that you not only dislike the Nazis, but you also must clearly not like Germany. You are a threat to us. You must be a danger. You can't be trusted. And this didn't come from just the government. This came from everyday people. So, the government could do things to you and could make your life harder, but a lot of ordinary people made things very difficult for people who weren't official Nazis as well. Going along with this was this idea that if you were different, you were a threat. So if you looked different, acted different, thought differently, you were a threat not only to the Nazis, but to Germany itself. Remember, the Nazis wanted to build a pure society with blonde hair and blue-eyed people. And so anyone who undermined that was a threat to the entire society. And you can be different in a lot of ways. It could be physically, if weren't the proper height, if one of your arms or legs were longer than the other in a significant way, that was a danger. But also mentally, people who were dyslexic, people who learned a little bit differently were considered a threat. We talked about communism, so you could be politically different. Maybe you don't agree with that Hitler guy, that was a threat. But also racially different. It wasn't just people who were Jewish who the Nazis were determined to get rid of, but also people who were Black, people who were Asian, anybody who had any sort of racial difference would often disappear. And it wasn't always the Nazis who made that happen. A lot of times it could be ordinary citizens who just felt like they were doing their duty as good German citizens, according to the Nazi ideal. And people didn't really investigate, well, hey, what happened to that person, because it worked in the Nazis' favor anyway. So the Nazis are not the only threat here. Regular people are very dangerous. And the third thing to remember is that Hitler was considered like a rock star. He was considered the savior of Germany. Hitler and the Nazis didn't like religion, but it was very strong in the South still, in the south of Germany. And he didn't get rid of religion, but he definitely put himself up there as someone who is just as important. Again, he was considered a savior, like a Jesus figure. People would stand for hours just to watch his motor car go by. If he made eye contact with you when he waved at you, that meant you were something special, and those people would remember that for the rest of their lives. He was idolized, he was godlike, and so any type of resistance to Hitler was also a threat and, uh, something that had to be taken care of, whether that was officially through the government or unofficially through your peers. Thank you for your time. That's it for today. Go ahead, start reading. You should be pretty much prepared. And don't forget to do your reflection at the end. Thank you very much for your time.